We all want the best of both. Dessert without calories, luxury without expense. And how about security without passwords? With Okta, it's possible. We secure identity so you can safely use any technology. Okta, the world's identity company.
The IKEA Business Network is now open for small businesses and entrepreneurs. Take your small business to the next level when you sign up for IKEA Business Network for free today at IKEA.com.
Welcome to Inc. for Starters with Alexa Von Tobel. I'm Alexa, a serial entrepreneur myself and founder and managing partner of Inspired Capital, a venture firm that backs fearless founders who are solving some of the biggest challenges facing humanity. Now in our 6th season, we sit down each week with one of the best founders on the planet to hear their story of guts, inspiration, and drive. Let's dive right in. This week, meet Noah Glass, the founder and CEO of Olo, a leading open SaaS platform for restaurants. Noah began working in the food service industry 20 years ago, serving as a cashier, server, bartender, and delivery driver. In 2005, Noah founded Olo, where his work with mobile ordering predates the iPhone. Today, over 700 restaurant brands trust Olo to grow their sales, do more with less, and make every single guest feel like a regular. Olo's clients include Denny's, Five Guys, Jamba Juice, Shake Shack, and many, many more. Noah's been named one of the most influential people in food service, recognized as one of the most intriguing entrepreneurs by Goldman Sachs, and has also been recognized by Business Week for his contributions in shaping the restaurant industry. Noah holds a BA in political science from Yale and serves on the boards of Portillo's, Share Our Strength, and trustees for the Culinary Institute of America. And with that, let's welcome fellow entrepreneur, Noah. Noah, first of all, I'm so excited to have you on here. I obviously met you years ago because of Danny Meyer and one of his amazing restaurants. I'm so excited to see you again today. And obviously what you've built is incredible. Let's go back to the beginning, to 2005. What is Olo in your own words? And what was the aha moment?
Alexa, first I should say, great to see you. It's been years, as you said, but I'm honored to be here and thank you so much for having me. I would say today that Olo is a leading guest data platform for the $1.2 trillion US restaurant industry. And we talk about helping restaurants to make every guest feel like a regular by living our mission of hospitality at scale. Back in 2005, that is not what Olo was. What Olo was in 2005 was a mobile ordering company. So a company that enabled you to order and pay and skip the line at coffee shops and restaurants and basically get your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner a little bit faster by taking the magic of e-commerce and applying it to the restaurant industry because of the advent of mobile phones and really on-demand services that were enabled by consumers walking around with those devices. The challenge was that in 2005, almost none of us had smartphones. It was under 5% of the population that had what could even be considered a smartphone, and they weren't very smart. Most people were walking around with flip phones. And so we had to build backwards. We had to build something that met the consumer where they were. And so in 2005 version of Olo, it was text message ordering that everybody could use. And that was really how we came to market in New York City, where we're proudly still based today, 19 years later.
I want to go back to something because you are one of the entrepreneurs that truly was early, ahead of your time, maybe even too early at moments you probably questioned. How at that time did you convince others to see what you saw? And where did that vision really clearly come from?
Well, I'd grown up years earlier working inside of the industry. So my first official job, I worked as a cashier at a service station. And then a year later, when I had my license and had a car to drive, I became a pizza delivery driver. So I kind of got some of the basic building blocks of how the operational side of restaurants and service-oriented businesses worked. Then I moved to New York City in 2003. And when I moved to New York City, I was one of these people who had kind of an early version of a smartphone. In my case, it was a Palm Pilot, a personal digital assistant that I carried around with me. And this is kind of how I managed my schedule and basically managed my life. It was a weird thing to be walking around with as a 22-year-old in New York City at the time, but it gave me an insight into this world in which we would have a supercomputer in our pockets, and one that was intensely personal and location aware and could enable us to do things like find nearby restaurants and have kind of an on-demand experience. I didn't have those words at the time, but that's really what I saw in 2003. And that's when I wrote the original business plan for what became Olo years later, was at the end of 2003. I then got an opportunity to move to Johannesburg, South Africa in 2004 with Endeavor, where I was working in 2003 and 2004. And it was when I was in Johannesburg that I met mobile software developers who were building software for mobile web enabled devices. And it was an epiphany that we could create the capability for something like my Palm Pilot to actually place an order and pay for that order and enable that magical VIP experience of getting to skip the line at a coffee shop or a restaurant.
When you were trying to convince people, how skeptical were people in those early days?
People were intensely skeptical. Like many entrepreneurs can tell you, I pitched dozens of venture capital firms and was rejected by nearly all of them. And I remember also that there were some early press pieces on Olo where you would have reporters going and interviewing people standing in line at a restaurant or a coffee shop and saying, would you place an order through a text message or through a mobile phone? And a lot of the people said, I would never, ever do that. I love standing in line. I don't know what they were thinking, but it wasn't just rejected by investors. There were a lot of very skeptical consumers, and there were a lot of very skeptical restaurant owners. And I'd say even today, there are still skeptical restaurant owners who maybe feel like technology doesn't belong in this industry. Like this industry is so built on the human connection that any use of technology that could be seen as coming in between a server and a guest, or a cashier and a guest, or the restaurant brand and that guest has no place.
Describe what Olo does for a customer. And again, to name some of them, you have Five Guys, to Jamba Juice, to many other brands that we all eat from and use. Describe what you do today. And then I want to talk about AI and where the category is going.
Okay. So there are sort of three main things that we do. The first that we're best known for is online ordering, namesake of the company. And ordering, if you've ever ordered from Shake Shack or ordered from Sweetgreen using the kiosk or the app where you've placed the order and then you've had a better, faster experience picking up that order or getting it delivered to you, those two companies and 700 others are built on top of the Olo platform. So online ordering for enterprise restaurants, very much like e-commerce, but for the restaurant industry. So we talk about it as on-demand commerce for restaurants. That's the core of our business. Takeout and delivery, and increasingly also on-premise and drive-through, but orders initiated by the guest on their own device, whether that's on the website, on their laptop, through the app, or on a kiosk inside of the restaurant. That's order. Pay is an integrated payment component so that we've integrated technologies like Stripe and Adyen for a best-in-class payment experience within the ordering experience. And now we're also doing payments for kiosk transactions and now also point of sale transactions, which is about a better payment experience for the guest, more data for the operator, because we can pull all of that data back into our guest data platform. And that guest data platform, which I really talk about as what Olo is now in the industry, is that third capability that we call Engage. And Engage is about using all of that data for marketing purposes to communicate with the guest and to enhance and personalize their experience in interacting with the restaurant, inclusive of ordering with the restaurant. So an example of that is making a personalized recommendation for you, Alexa, based on what I know that you've tried and liked in the past, and based on what other guests like you have tried and liked, but that you've never tried before.
I love it. And if you fast forward, you've said you really believe the hospitality industry is still in its early innings of this big digital transformation. Let's fast forward 5 years, 10 years. Give us a sense of some of the predictions that you see in plain sight that are coming your way that Olo is going to get to leverage.
One of the reasons why I say that we're so early is that digital is still only 16% of total transactions within our industry. And that means the other 84% of transactions are non-digital transactions. So there's a huge opportunity to grow digital as a share of total transactions in this industry. And that's just happening naturally over time as more guests choose to order ahead or get food delivered or order inside the restaurant through a digital channel or order through the drive-through in the digital channel. But also, I think the flip side of that is restaurants getting to know that guest and using the data that they're able to see to really personalize the guest experience. And the technology here is not new in the world. It's what Amazon's been using, and Netflix and Spotify and YouTube have been using for decades now. But it is new to the restaurant industry. Being able to identify who that guest is and being able to bring all of the data that we've collected with the guest permission. And that's a very important part of it, is guests saying, I want to be known and I want you to be able to use that data to enrich my experience. But the restaurant being able to use all that data to really personalize the experience and make restaurants feel not like one size fits all as they do today, where we all see the same menu, but to really get restaurants to the point where it's one size fits one, where I can give you a version of my menu that is Alexa's version of my menu. And it wouldn't be the same as Noah's version of the menu because you like things that are different than what I like. And we're going to optimize that experience based on what we know about you.
What do you think the catalyst will be to go from 16 to 35? Is it in your mind just this like 1% a year slow drip of improvement to digital? I can imagine like I should see a different menu at Target. I mean, I should. I tend to buy the same things. I should see a different menu at Starbucks because I tend to buy the same things. We're not getting those.
One thing that I think is important is to go a level deeper and think about the different ways in which people use restaurants. So of those 100% of transactions that US consumers place at US restaurants, 29% are takeout transactions where you're getting the order and you're eating it somewhere else. Only 8% is delivery, which is a shock, I find, to a lot of New Yorkers who think that must be massive. But it's only 8% of this massive industry. 26% are on premise, which means I'm actually eating inside the four walls of the restaurant. And in the early days, when I would say restaurants, the majority are not transactions inside the four walls where you're eating there, that would blow investors' minds because they just thought, well, that is what I think of as a restaurant, is you go and you sit and you eat at the restaurant. But today, that's effectively 1 out of every 4 transactions. The largest category is drive-through. And there's a lot of innovation happening in the drive-through that will take it from being very manual, very old technology, speaking into a speaker box and having a teenager on a headset on the other end, not being able to hear you very well or be heard very well, and turn it into a digitally enhanced experience. So we were thrilled we got to announce a partnership last quarter with Dutch Bros, which is just this phenom of a restaurant that is a double lane drive-through primarily for coffee and energy drinks. And I believe they're really leading the way in what is a big revolution in drive-through technology to become a digital experience and then to take advantage of all of the data that comes from that to personalize the experience and up-level hospitality. But if you think about drive-through, when that shifts from what is today about 0% digital, it has the potential to move the needle tremendously because it's 37% of all the transactions in this industry.
What does the future of drive-through look like? Now I have to know.
I think there are a couple of different experiences. One is somebody's ordered ahead and they have a faster experience collecting the order at the drive-through. And that's starting to happen today. You have brands like Portillo's that are doing a really good job of this, where the order's been placed in advance and the pickup handoff mode is at the drive-through. So you can pull up, you're not gated by all the other cars in front of you, but you can skip the line of cars and collect your order and be on your way. That's one way. The other way is somebody hasn't ordered in advance and they're still ordering on premise, but that order can now take place through a digital channel. And there are a couple different flavors of that. One is, you can imagine, kiosk ordering, where you're ordering from a touchscreen. The other is voice AI. And there have been a lot of experiments in voice AI. Olo has a very rich partner ecosystem, over 400 technology partners. Many of those, I'd say 4 or 5 of them, are voice AI companies that have plugged into the Olo API to fetch the menu, and inject the order into the restaurant, but they're basically enabling guests to interact with artificial intelligence instead of a human on the other end with not very good sound equipment typically.
That's amazing. Do you feel like we'll see a huge leap there? How quickly do you feel like that AI movement will come? If you had to guess, and of course you don't know all the answers, but what's your guess?
I think AI through the drive-through specifically will take a little bit of time. And part of that is just the natural rate of adoption of new technology within this industry. And part of the gate to faster adoption is you have the franchisor corporate making decisions, and then you have franchisees, operators who also have to be on board and say, this makes sense for me, and I'm willing to spend the capital to put this in place. So that naturally elongates the rate of change or the rate of technology adoption in this industry. I also think voice AI is probably the most obvious thing. If you were to say something, how do you imagine AI being used in restaurants? The first thing that people would say is, oh, voice AI for ordering. That's the first thing they think about. We see AI at use in our business behind the scenes in ways that I think have a big impact today and will have a bigger impact faster than that voice AI and the drive-through example. So examples like in the kitchen, knowing how many orders they have the capacity to make at this certain time, and if they can accept another order, or if we should say, Alexa, we can't have that order ready for you at 6, but could you pick it up at 6:15 because we have capacity then. That being informed by real-time data and machine learning and AI is really powerful. That keeps the kitchen as productive as possible without overpromising to the guest and without leaving money on the table. And that's something that we've been doing through a product called Order Ready AI for about a year now with great, great success. In payments, we're using AI. In marketing, we're using AI. And then there's this elusive voice AI in the drive-through or for a guest calling in over the phone. And instead of speaking to a cashier who's trying to serve customers in front of them and answer the phone, being able to channel that order through a voice AI and put that into the platform.
Noah, I know that you took Olo public in March of 2021. So you were 16 plus years in. You're now almost 20 years in, which is incredible. Take us back to that aha moment, that moment, taking the company public. And what do you feel like you learned from crossing that chasm?
The biggest thing for us in that moment was realizing that we had become mission critical for so many of our customers. And that actually happened before COVID, before the pandemic, that we got to that point for a couple of our customers where Olo had become mission critical. It had become the majority of their business. And they felt like, I need to make sure that Olo is going to be around for the long term, that Olo is going to continue being an open platform, an independent platform, serving my interests on my side forever. Otherwise, I'm going to have to build my own platform or something of that kind. And there have been a couple of examples of competitors of ours who had been acquired or had gone out of business and effectively went away. And that was always a scary experience for the restaurant brands that were using those platforms, who then had to scramble and find an alternative. And in the short term, that always benefited us. We won some customers, Jimmy John's, Cracker Barrel, because of events like that. But as a pattern, it was a very scary pattern for restaurant brands seeing digital become a greater and greater portion of their business and feeling like if Olo follows the same pattern of these other companies and goes out of business or gets acquired by somebody distasteful to me or shut down in some way, I'll be out of luck. So we knew that in order to demonstrate to the industry that Olo is going to be around for the long term and can play this mission critical role for you, we had to take that step. So we'd started to prepare for this in 2019. And then in, I think it was early February of 2020, we had drafted our S1 and we were planning, okay, June 2020, that's when we're going to go out and become a public company. And then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, we were in the fog of war that was the early days of COVID and trying to figure out what it was going to mean for our industry, for our customers, for our team, for our business. And we just decided, let's put the IPO plans on the shelf for the moment, put our heads down, take care of our team, take care of our customers, see what happens from this. And what happened was a big step change in digital penetration for the industry. such that when the fog started to lift and we were coming out of COVID, we realized we've become mission critical for many, many more of our customers. We really have to see the IPO plan through. We were able to pick things up and actually go public, as you mentioned, in March of 2021. And I think the proof is in the pudding. Since going public, we've had over a dozen major brands leave a homegrown platform that they had built and were sustaining on their own and migrate over to the Olo platform. Brands like TGI Fridays, brands like Jack in the Box, brands like Outback Steakhouse, major brands, some public scale. But that was the best proof to me that this was the right thing for us to do, that it gave restaurant customers and prospects the certainty that Olo was a profitable company with the right philosophy of being an open and independent platform, and with a very strong balance sheet. We raised over $500 million in the IPO, and that put us in a really stable financial position to play this role for the long term for our industry.
And we'll be right back after a message from our sponsors.
We all want the best of both. Dessert without calories, luxury without expense, and how about security without passwords? With Okta, it's possible. We secure identity for your business, so you can safely use any technology. You can build experiences that are richer and more secure, grow revenue without running up costs, and scale easily, no matter your tech stack. Enjoying the best of both? It's possible. It's Okta. Okta, the world's identity company.
The IKEA Business Network is now open for small businesses and entrepreneurs. Join for free today to get access to interior design services to help you make the most of your workspace, and employee well-being benefits that will help you and your people grow, as well as amazing discounts on travel, insurance, IKEA purchases, deliveries, and more. Take your small business to the next level when you sign up for the IKEA Business Network for free today at IKEA.com.
No, I want to transition to you. You grew up in Boston, and you've now become a founder who went from literal founder to IPO, still running a huge business at the helm 20 years later. If we go back to your childhood, was there something that is sort of obvious in the rearview mirror that you think really contributed to your ability to having this staying power, this power of adaptability and resilience? What would it be?
Well, definitely my family and my parents and their encouragement along the way. I'm the youngest of three children. And I always tell the story. My mom is a cookbook author, and she wrote a book called Rescuing the Dinner Hour. She wrote several cookbooks, but that was the one that comes to mind. And it's about, meals that you can make for a busy family so that everybody can eat together. So much of my childhood is about being the youngest child at the family dinner table and trying to sort of earn my spot at the table in discussions and debate. That was really how I grew up. I can imagine my dad saying, "You're level-headed," or something like that. And I can imagine my mom saying, "And you love a challenge." And I think both of those things, being level-headed and loving a challenge, have been so important to identify as really sort of superpowers over the course of 19 years. Because there have been so many times when this has been such an unbelievable challenge. And there have been so many times we're keeping a level head and just knowing that it's never as bad as it seems. It's never as good as it seems. Really serves you well, and just having the ability to stay steady and be a solid foundation for all of the people around you.
Those are two really good traits to have the combo of loving a challenge and being level-headed. That's pretty special. One of the things I really love about you is you started your career as a cashier, a server, a bartender, a delivery driver. You've literally done all the jobs. How did all of that food service industry experience and really understanding each of the players, each of the roles, make you a better founder for this business?
I think having played all those different roles really gave me empathy for the operation side of the restaurant business. And it's easy to look at restaurants and say, "Oh, that's an easy business. Anybody could run a restaurant." It is a really hard business. And given how hard it is, I think anybody who's watched the series The Bear has witnessed just how hard it is. But given all of that and how stressful all the parts of it are, rising to the level where you can still provide great hospitality and make the guest feel cherished and like they matter, like they're seen and known and understood, is hard. And so understanding that and understanding that we should build things to be very powerful in the background, but very simple in how we present them in the moment to operators and to restaurant staff has been one of our design principles. And it's really served us well. And I think comes from not just me, many of us having come from this industry and having seen all of the demands that are put on restaurant employees and restaurant operators.
I love that. I really do think having that firsthand experience just it makes you client number one, and it's just a really powerful level of empathy that I think really adds up. One of the things you and I both have in common that I love, you fully hit pause on business school to pursue building this business. I also dropped out of business school to build LearnBest. Both of those decisions were to take the riskier path. They were probably both pretty unpopular at the time. How did you work up the courage?
Well, I've been thinking about Olo since the end of 2003 when I first moved to New York. And I made this decision to not go to business school, but to withdraw from Harvard Business School and pursue this full time in 2005. So it had already been this dream of mine. I'd already been putting in the sweat equity for probably 18 months at that point. And I just came to believe like there's no better time in my life for taking a risk like this. And there's no better time in the history of technology for me to plant a flag in what I think is a new wave of consumer technology, smartphones. And so if both of those things are true, I'm going to regret not doing this for my whole life if I don't do it. And I was already thinking that way. And I showed the business plan and a working prototype to an investor who I knew could provide the seed funding for us to really do this full time. And he really put it to me and said, look, you have to burn the boats. You have to make this your only path forward, quit your job, withdraw from business school. You're not going. If you can do those two things, I will give you $500,000 to get things started. If you don't feel that conviction, that's fine too. But I need to know that you're in with that level of conviction so that I know that I should be in with $500,000. And that was such an amazing challenge to be put to of, are you willing to burn the boats? Are you willing to make this the only path forward? And I knew that I was ready. I knew that that business school wasn't going anywhere. I'd have to go through probably the GMAT and the application process again, but I had to take this chance. And there have been times over the years when I've looked back at that moment and been like, oh, why did I decide what I decided? But overall, I'm very happy that I made that decision. It's worked out. It's been an incredible learning process all along the way. And I know that there are things that I would have learned at business school that I haven't yet learned, but I think there are so many things that I learned that I wouldn't have learned at business school.
I love that. Particularly what I love about that is burn the boats. It's a really, are you all in? First of all, I wish I was that seed investor at the time. I wish Inspired existed. I love that as like a important framework, which is, are you ready to put everything behind you on fire so that there's only one? I always joke, there's no plan B, there's only plan A.
Yeah.
And that's just another way, burn the boats.
Totally true. I mean, at times that was a big burden, to be honest. I mean, it felt, to stick with the boat analogy, like I was myself strapped to the mast. Like, I was going to go down with the ship. I had a hard time in the early years separating my own identity with the identity of the company. And there were times when the company was not doing well and it felt like a huge personal failure. And it took a lot of work for me to be able to find the daylight in between myself and the company, still be fully committed to the success of the company, but not feel like this is all I had in the world. And if it wasn't going well, or if it was not going to work, that I wasn't going to work.
I really appreciate the boat analogy. Sometimes I used to joke, I was like, I'm not sure if I'm running the company or if the company's running me because we're so tied in.
Yeah.
But I think that's the only way you can do it if you're going to be successful is you have to be that all in. No, I'm going to move to the quick fire round. I'm going to ask you 3 quick questions. First thing that comes to mind, what is a motto or a quote that you live by? Something that just like really you deeply agree with?
I would say there is a quote by an author named Wendell Berry, and it goes with my having a good head on my shoulders, as my dad said. That was actually his expression. But the quote is, be joyful, though you've considered all the facts. We all have a choice in how we show up. And if you can go through life with a smile on your face and joy in your heart, despite really thinking about all the things good and all the things bad and all the things in between, that's the way to be.
I love that with every ounce of my being. What a beautiful point. Noah, is there a book that has sort of changed the way you think about life?
My mom bought me a book and had it signed by the author and gave it to me soon after I'd started Olo. And the book is Setting the Table by Danny Meyer. And it became, when she gave it to me with a beautiful inscription from Danny, which I've since showed him, almost annual tradition that I return to it every year. I read through it and I always hear something different. I listen to the book on Audible because Danny reads it and he reads it beautifully. I love books read by the author. I think you can really hear them the way that they were meant to be heard by the author when they're read by the author. That book has become the Bible at Olo. It's the thing that everybody receives when they join the company. So much of our thinking about hospitality at scale, that mission, is derived from that book. And the way that we talk about our stakeholders and the way that we think about being on the restaurant side, it all comes from Setting the Table and Danny's philosophy of enlightened hospitality. And I think it's an incredible business book broadly outside of our industry as well. And I think Danny is the most creative business thinker that I've ever met. And he's an incredible human being and mentor. And it's been an amazing 10 years to know the book's author and know that he lives every ounce of that book.
I love that. I'm just smiling because it's just such a beautiful full circle. Last question. What's an interview question that you really like to get a sense of somebody?
So it actually comes from Setting the Table, and it's fitting because I just joined you getting off of an interview where I asked this very question as my first question, which was, you're a very talented person. Why is it that Olo is the place that you feel like you would most enjoy spending your time and your talent? What is it about this opportunity when you could work basically anywhere? I mean, that tends to be the case. We are interviewing people, all of us, who have talents that they could work in hundreds, thousands of places. What is it that makes them passionate about this company, this mission? Why is this the thing that they want to go the extra mile for? I think that's the essential question to ask, and a good answer sounds very different than a bad answer.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think that is the question to ask. Noah, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody, if you're out there and you happen to run anything that touches a restaurant, you need to know more about Olo. So check out olo.com, OLO.com. And you can join us next week for a new episode of For Starters with Alexa Von Tobel. Noah, you are absolutely incredible. You have so much soul. It is so fun to get to chat with you. We're rooting for you. Thank you.
Alexa, ditto. Thank you so much for having me.